What would you do if you were faced with an army so massive that it darkened the land as it marched? Would you run? Surrender? Or would you stand your ground, knowing that death was certain? This is the story of 300 warriors who chose to fight against impossible odds. The Battle of Thermopylae, where courage became legend. 480 BC. A moment where warriors chose death over surrender. Where 300 Spartans, led by King Leonidas, stood against the might of the Persian Empire. This is the Battle of Thermopylae. Thermopylae, also known as the Hot Gates, was no ordinary battlefield. It was a narrow pass between towering cliffs and the Aegean Sea, a bottleneck that could turn the tides of war. For centuries, it had been a crucial military checkpoint, a place where invaders were stopped, or where history was rewritten. And in the late summer of 480 BC, the Persian king, Xerxes, arrived with an army so vast that, according to legend, it drank rivers dry. Some ancient accounts claim he commanded 2.5 million soldiers. Modern historians believe the number was closer to 200,000, but even that was a force unmatched in scale. Against them, a mere 7,000 Greek warriors, led by the fearless 300 Spartans. The Greeks knew they couldn't match the Persians in numbers. So they chose their battlefield wisely. Thermopylae's narrow pass made it impossible for Xerxes to use his full army at once, forcing him to send wave after wave of soldiers into a brutal bottleneck. And at the very heart of this resistance stood Leonidas and his elite Spartan warriors. But before the first arrow was even fired, Xerxes hesitated. When he reached the pass, he stopped. For 5 days, he waited, perhaps expecting the Greeks to surrender, or perhaps letting his massive fleet regroup after being battered by storms. Finally, he grew impatient and sent a scout to observe the Greek forces. What the spy reported back was baffling. He had expected to see fear, panic, or desperate last-minute fortifications. Instead, he found the Spartans calmly combing their hair and oiling their bodies. They were preparing for battle, as if it were a mere formality. Xerxes, outraged but intrigued, sent a messenger demanding their surrender. The Greek response? A single phrase from Leonidas, "Come and take them." And so, the battle began. The first wave of Persians charged, but the Spartans, standing shield to shield, held firm. Armed with their long spears, heavy bronze shields, and iron discipline, they cut through the Persian ranks with ruthless precision. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse, with Persian bodies piling high at the entrance to the pass. Xerxes, furious, sent in his elite warriors, the Immortals. These were the best soldiers in the Persian army, undefeated in battle, trained for war since childhood. But even they faltered against the disciplined Spartan phalanx. The narrow pass prevented them from using their numbers to their advantage, and their wicker shields and short spears were no match for the heavily armored Spartans. The Immortals fell just as easily as the rest. For 2 days, the Greeks held their ground, turning back every attack. But then, disaster struck. A local Greek named Ephialtes, driven by greed or fear, betrayed his own people. He revealed a hidden mountain path that allowed the Persians to flank the Greek position. The Spartans were about to be surrounded. Leonidas knew what this meant. If the Greek army stayed, it would be annihilated. So he made a fateful decision. He ordered most of his forces to retreat. But he and his 300 Spartans, along with 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans, chose to stay. They would fight to the last man, buying time for Greece to prepare for the war ahead. And so, as the Persian army closed in from both sides, the Spartans made their final stand. They fought with unmatched fury, using swords, spears, even their bare hands when their weapons broke. They knew there was no escape, no reinforcements coming. But still, they fought. Leonidas himself fell in battle, his body surrounded by his loyal warriors. His men fought desperately to recover their king's body, refusing to let it fall into enemy hands. But eventually, the last Spartan was slain. The battle was over, but the legend was just beginning. The Persians had won the pass, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of their soldiers lay dead. And more importantly, the Greeks had been inspired. The sacrifice of the 300 Spartans became a rallying cry. Just months later, at the Battle of Salamis, the Greek navy crushed the Persian fleet. And a year after that, at the Battle of Plataea, the Greeks finally drove the invaders from their lands, securing their freedom. Today, the legacy of Thermopylae lives on. At the battlefield, a monument stands, bearing the famous words, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." The battle may have been lost, but the spirit of those warriors, of Leonidas and his 300, will never fade. They stood, they fought, they fell, but they became legends. If you were in their place, would you have stood alongside Leonidas? Let us know in the comments.